And welcome back to coverage here at the Players Tours Final. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And boy, oh boy, we do not have a Teamer Reclamation mirror for this round. Paul and I just settling in, checking out who's playing. As far as the players that are playing, we've got Riku Kumagai playing against Bolung Zhang down in the feature. But Paul, tell them what they're playing.
Well, you know, honestly, I had to read some of the cards that were in some of these decks. But we are seeing mono black aggro going up against 4-color planeswalkers. So this should be really, really interesting. We've seen mono black aggro before, right? Because it's a nice aggressive deck, plays around Ether Gust, all that stuff, sure. But 4-color planeswalkers, looking at the list, looks really exciting, and it looks fairly tuned to be, have reasonable game against aggressive strategy. So we'll see how this plays out.
That's right. Nicol Bolas Dragon God, anybody, right? And on the other side, it's, Hunted Nightmare and Rankle. So we've got quite a nice one. Let's head on down. It's time for round number 5 here from the Players Tour Finals.
Yeah, and one really interesting omission from the mono black aggro deck is Rotting Regisaur. I do not see Rotting Regisaur in the mono black aggro deck, and that comes as a really big surprise to me because we saw Ken Yukuhiro earlier identify Rotting Regisaur as one of the absolute best cards against Teamer Reclamation and choosing to play it, but really, really surprised to see it not actually in this deck.
I'm shocked, honestly.
Yeah.
I was looking over the list with you, and I just took for granted that card would be in there, and it's just not. Who's playing it? Riku Kumagai, who's playing the deck, has gone, I know it sounds weird, but somehow even bigger than that by playing 4-drops like Hunted Nightmare and Rankle to try to be kind of the big finishers. And also, what's it called? Spawn. The Spawn of Mayhem, excuse me, which sometimes does come down on 3, but when it doesn't, it's a 4. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this deck, Paul, but we're going to find out right now. And a pretty quick start here for Riku Kumagai, curving 1-drop into 2-drop.
Yeah, no, this is nice. He's going to be able to go 1-drop, 2-drop, probably get to Fairy, and then he can duress away the Ritual of Soot. But I will say Hunted Nightmare does a decent Rotting Regisaur impression in the sense that, again, specifically the Teamer Reclamation, 5 toughness is kind of the magic number because all the removal spells that they play deal 4 or less damage unless they play Soul Seer in the sideboard, which isn't all that common.
Also, yes, Chad is ever so gracefully pointing out that I misspoke. I said Hunted Nightmare when I was listing the 4-drops, but it's a 3. Thank you, chat, for the correction.
Chat's always right.
Ever gracious. So. Yeah, they are. I know that. I know how this works. When they have lethal, they have lethal. So what happens now? It looks like perhaps the Son of Mayhem is ready to come down. The Spectacle cost is online. It only costs 1 black here.
Yeah, and the big thing to note there is he knows about the Ritual of Soot, but the Spawn of Mayhem might have come out on turn 3, but the CMC is 4, so it actually dodges the Ritual of Soot. But Bowen kind of drew the perfect card here in Heartless Act to kill the Spawn and still be able to Ritual of Soot here and get back his Teferi.
Wow, that was a huge 1-2 punch there for Bolung Zhang, clearing the entirety of the board. Yeah, now there's a duress here for Riku, but it doesn't seem as good as it would have a turn ago. But of course, having to balance out whether to curve out. Now, another card that hasn't seen a ton of play in Standard is Atris, and that hits the battlefield now for Bolung Zhang.
Yeah, but really great mid-range value creature here, and actually synergizes quite well with Elspeth Conquers Death because you play it out, you curve it out, play it turn 4. That leaves you in a position where you can either trade away the Atris with another creature, or even if a Planeswalker goes into the graveyard, you can get that back with a turn 5 Elspeth Conquers Death.
Well, the damage continues to flow here for Riku Kumagai, attacking for 4, right past Atris, down to 9 goes Zhang. And you see Heartless Act in hand here for Kumagai. as well as a Black Lance Paragon. Not a real need to fire off anything here, as these can both be cast on Bolin's turn. So just going to pass the turn back.
Yeah, but Bolin will be in a reasonable spot here. He will have the Elspeth Conquers Death to deal with the Nightmare. He does have that Atris spec to block. I imagine he's going to keep it back. I mean, he could attack. He doesn't know about the Black Lance Paragon, but it seems to me that he might want to be playing kind of a longer game here. So there's also the Mobilized District that's in play, so he wants to keep that as a blocker.
Sure.
But
so
Riku, on the other hand, if he draws the land, if he draws a land, he can Heartless Act the Atris, play the Paragon, then activate the Mobilized District and put Bolin all the way down to 3.
Wow. So this could be another potential swing back in the other direction. Gutter Bones off the top of the library there.
Yeah, Riku really wanted to land there because that would have presented 2 lethal threats on the following turn.
So Elspeth Conquers Death on the battlefield, looking to tick up, though it won't affect board this next turn. It is going to take another turn after that, assuming that Bolin Zhang's still alive before it'll think back.
Look at this! You saw that!
Oh my God! Main deck, Cry of the Carnarium.
Wow,
that's so brutal. I'm telling you, if I'm Riku Kumagai, I am just flipping my desk over. I'm like, everybody was supposed to be playing Temur Reclamation, and I'm playing against the guy with main deck Cry of the Carnarium? What's going on here?
Did you see this? And a Timurite off the top here counters Elspeth Conquers Death.
Oh, very nice. I like it. So, hey, right back at you, Bolin Zhang. You know, it's like, it's not going to be that easy. And you can see a little smile from Bolin, too. Oh, wow.
One good top deck deserves another.
Absolutely. This is just a funny match. This is so different than anything we've seen in this tournament thus far. All right, Timuret looks like it's targeting Narset, but of course 2 cards, so might as well get another one while you're in there.
Right.
And what is that going to leave Bolin Zhang with? Well, Thought Erasure.
And he's got a Triome.
And that's it.
So he can sight here.
Yeah, Triome.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to find something.
Timuret had to have been one of the best possible creatures he could have drawn in this spot. That Elspeth Conquers Death was going to get back an Atris or a Planeswalker.
So cycle. And let's see if Zhang can find anything to affect the board here. No, it's just a land off the top. I am curious to see if Bolin just plays the... Nope. Yeah, that's where I was going too, just to get the Surveil.
Wait. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not... This is going to be tough. He needs like an Atris.
Yeah, that's game. Yeah. He needed something that affected the board into another card that also affected the board. So Atris, perfect example of that. But as it turns out, it was a land off the top there for Zhang. And that means that Riku Kumagai is going to pick up game number 1, even after having been swept twice. Like Kumagai lost his entire board 2 times during the course of that game in this mono black creature based deck and somehow found the win anyway.
Yeah, that Timuret was huge. I mean, Bolin found some timely cards off the top as well, but being able to not only put pressure on the board, but finding something that also dealt with phase 3 of the Elspeth Death was really, really big.
Chat is loving it, by the way. They're eating up this matchup. We saw Temur Rec Mirror last round, and they were all salty about it. Now they're just like, yes, this is real magic.
You didn't expect mono black aggro against 4-color planeswalkers coming into this event, Marshall? That's kind of strange.
Like, seriously, if I'm Riku and my opponent sweeps the board twice, I'm like, you cannot be serious right now. Like, none of these cards do anything against Temur Rec. Oh, man.
Yeah.
But still, finding the win helps. Now, I don't really know what to do sideboard games here, though, if I'm sitting in Riku's seat, because Riku's sideboard is heavily removal based. The sideboard is 4 Cry of the Carnarium, assuming a sort of a shift over to a more controlling version of the deck. A Murderous Rider, a Karavek the Spiteful, 3 Noxious Grasp, 3 Grasp of Darkness. Those are all removal spells in some way or another. And then there's 3 Agonizing Remorse in there as well. So the deck looks like it can pivot to a less creature intensive and more controlling version, but I don't know if that's the right move here.
Yeah, I mean, I like how simple the strategy is, because if you look at a sideboard, it's basically, I have 3 Agonizing Remorses and a Murderous Rider that I'm going to board in. I'm going to take out 4 Heartless Sacks. And this is basically what I'm going to do in every single mid-range or control matchup. And in every other matchup, I'm just going to bring in a ton of removal spells. That's basically it.
Fair enough. Wow, look at that hand from Bolung Zhang.
That is
one of them's got to go back, and it's going to be the... Yeah, it's a terrible hand filled with a lot of power. And what we're probably going to see here is that Cry of the Carnarium is either going to carry the day or not. And as it stands, it's not. There's 2 different ways for Riku Kumagai to get that out of Bolung's hand. And the hand really falls apart at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Riku's got 11 hand disruption elements after sideboard. He's got the Duresses, the Agonizing Remorses, and also the Kitesail Freebooters. So the best way to beat these decks is just, hey, can't stop what's on top of the deck. Try to find something off the top.
That's right.
Or maybe off this Narset.
So a lot of pressure on Narset here because Narset's going to be gone if Riku chooses. So this really needs to find something to deal with the board, basically just trying to chain a bunch of sweepers together. As we've stated, though, Riku also staring down at a Duress is the only spell left in hand for him, and that could easily take away one of the powerful options that Bolung has either in hand or finds. The overriding factor here, though, is really the mana for Bolung. Not a whole lot going on. Currently not slated to cast anything next turn or potentially the turn after, depending on what kind of mana Bolung can find. So this is a sketchy spot for sure. Definitely advantage to Riku Kumagai at this point. And look at that, there's another Kitesail Freebooter. By the way, it was Ritual of Soot there found, was it not?
Yeah, it was. But yeah, Riku does have Freebooter plus the rest. But, you know, Bolung can come right back into this, but the important thing is for him to find another spot removal spell or a sweeper off the top. And I'm sure he's got a ton after sideboard. So, you know, Riku's not putting a ton of pressure on right now, right? He's been able to kind of disrupt Bolung's game plan, but doesn't have a ton of power in play.
Yeah, I assume that Riku can just take away like Elspeth Conquers Death and just duress away the Ritual of Soot. That would leave Bolung 2 black mana sources away from casting Nicol Bolas, as well as an additional just mana source of any type. That's miles away from anything going on. And, you know, you can take away the Narset here as well. Oh, it looks like Riku's going to actually take a different line here.
Probably.
So this is kind of interesting, Paul, because this does leave the opportunity for Bolung to try to find a sweeper in the next turn or two and actually get those cards back off of these freebooters.
Oh yeah, Riku is
a black
crossing his fingers and hoping that there is not a removal spell off the top. Wow, that's another hand disruption spell. So now you can even get that Elspeth Conquers Death.
But this gets really interesting now because with that second black mana source for Zhang, there are mortars in this deck. Like,
yeah,
I'm just saying, like a Ritual of Soot off the top or whatever.
Yes, sweeper or bust. I mean, even a spot removal spell, but I mean, it's a 3-turn clock here.
Triple Kitesail Freebooter. Chat says get booted.
Get booted.
But this is very much down to a top deck.
Riku could also activate the Mobilized District, and that would represent a 2-turn clock. But given that he saw that Ritual of Soot, given that he saw Ritual of Soot and Cry of the Carnarium, Bolung might not have a great answer for Spawn of Mayhem. So he might just want to play that and feel like he's fairly safe against the sweeper.
Oh, there's a Cry of the Carnarium off the top of the library for Bolung Zhang. The question is it too late?
Well, I mean, he's got all of those cards back.
kill
man.
four things, get three cards back into hand. Dude, that was insane. The Elspeth Conquers Death is still in hand now.
Yeah,
this isn't
the thing is,
right?
Bolin is not going to be able to. He's white, but he's not going to be able to deal with that mobilized district. He's got that Elspeth Conquers Death for the Spawn of Mayhem, but he doesn't have an answer for mobilized district.
You're totally right, Paul. That is the exact winning card that dodges a sweeper or removal effect of almost any kind and can get the job done here. Riku Kumagai picks up the match 2-0 to improve to 4-1. And boy, oh boy, did they give us some drama there with the ends of those games. I mean, the number of sweepers that Kumagai had to face over the course of that match was absurd. And then when you combine that with the fact that Kumagai was doing the hand disruption every single turn, it felt like, made those games very, very swingy and ultimately very close.
Yeah, I mean, he was able to just kind of slow things down because he basically just prevented Bolin from ever casting a spell until he finally top decked one. And also just that heads-up play of just running out that Spawn of Mayhem, knowing that the two primary sweepers that Bolin has access to, the Spawn of Mayhem is immune to, right? So by playing that next turn, you get the ping, you have that threat that still stays on the battlefield, and then you have just enough pressure where even if he does play an Elspeth Conquers Death on the following turn, he's still going to die.
Yeah, you know, Mobilized District is a card that, you know, it's seen some play, right? But not a ton of it, where when we see those creature lands, they're really, really powerful, normally speaking. And, you know, they'll often find their way into basically any deck that can play them. For Mobilized District, it's mainly been monocolor decks that have been able to take advantage of it. But I have to say, when it is a good fit for a deck, it works really, really well. Super powerful in this match, too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just not a lot of good instant speed ways that people are playing right now to get it off the battlefield. You know, Ether Gust, Brazen Board, none of these cards actually interact with the land. So oftentimes, if you can put enough pressure, force your opponent to have a sweeper, oftentimes you're low enough where that Mobilized District can present lethal damage.
That's right. Okay, what we're going to do now is catch our breath after that exciting first round here of the first match of the fifth round. But we're going to take a little break. When we come back, though, we'll have more Magic action for you here from the Players Tours Final. Don't go anywhere.
And keep in mind, Brad Nelson, I mean, he, like you said, he took the harder road to the finals, right? Lost immediately and had to win several matches in a row to make it all the way here.
Yeah, 4 in a row just to get in, and now he's got to win 2 more if he's going to take the trophy, the 100K, and the Seed of Worlds. Oh, man. Brad Nelson just finding the pressure and forcing Glogowski to react to him. That's so important, because if you let Pyotr just sit here, he will just generate so much advantage. He'll bear you. Ooh, Mayhem Devil, does that do anything?
That is big. That's going to do a lot of damage. He's got access to the Fabled Passage, the Witch's Oven.
Pyotr Glogowski perhaps on the verge of winning Mythic Championship 7. There goes Nissa, who shakes the world. She's off the battlefield. That's stage number 1 for Glogowski. Pyotr Glogowski has not lost a match in this tournament. He's looking to go end-to-end undefeated and hoist the trophy. Brad looks like he's thinking, but he's got this smile on his face. He looks over at Canister.
Canister's relaxing with his hand over his head. He's like, you know what? Might be time to pack my swim trunks and get ready for Hawaii.
Even Canister has to laugh at this. The rope number 2 is going down, and Canister says, you know, I'll hang out here. I'm okay with it. Brad giving Canister a taste of his own medicine with the thinking emotes.
Oh, the clock gets even longer. He's out of timeouts, by the way.
Yeah, this is the last one. Brad has to make a move or that rope is going to get him, and he is going to concede. It is Canister, Pyotr Glogowski. He is your champion for Mythic Championship 7. Congratulations.
Trail of Crumbs. How many cards did that draw him?
And welcome back to coverage here of the Players Tours Finals. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And look, you asked for it and we delivered. Now, we can't guarantee no more teamer mirrors. In fact, we could probably guarantee there will be more teamer mirrors because that's just how this tournament is. But our next round has no teamer, in fact, in it at all. In the feature match, we've got Andrew Cuneo versus Ken Yuki.
Yeah, we call him the people's champion. I've been watching the chat, and anytime Ken Yukihiro seems to be doing well, people are loving it because he did build his deck specifically to target Teamer Reclamation. So it's really curious to see how his deck will fare against non-Teamer Reclamation decks. Yeah. So it looks like Ken Yukihiro here with that Sphinx of Foresight, allowing you one lander. But I mean, take a look at his hand here. He's got all the interesting cards. He's got the 2 copies of Ether Gust right in hand. That's really, really good against the mono green aggressive deck. He got the Sphinx. He got to find the additional lands that he needs to run out his threats. But I mean, Cuneo's also got a really, really nice start here. And with Ken Yukihiro here, he knows that he needs to prevent Andrew from ramping out. This is actually kind of the new innovation that Andrew Cuneo, I believe William Huey Jensen also chose to add to their mono green aggressive decks. That's adding Paradise to it because a lot of the power in the mono green deck comes once you hit 4 mana. Cards like Questing Beast, cards like Nissa Who Shakes the World. All right, so now Ken is looking to just put on a lot of pressure here. Turn your Rotting Regisaur. The cards in hand are going to be gone very, very quickly, so you're going to have to try to end this game. And as you can see, I mean, this hand is fine, but doesn't quite have the same impact as you would expect when you're comparing it to something like that. You know, when you saw how this deck performed against the Teamer Reclamation deck.
What an absurd list from Yukihiro, by the way. You and I were talking about it with Mani Davudi earlier, and it was like, what, you know, Mani's even said on air, he's like, I just would never come to this conclusion if I had said, all right, I'm going to try to build a deck, you know, designed to beat Teamer Reclamation, and somehow you end up with like Esper. What is it, aggro? I don't even know how to describe this deck. Mid-range,
Esper,
sure.
Mid-range, I guess. but yeah, there's
stuff.
If you're like, Paul, go get in the lab, figure out the best possible configuration to beat Teamer Reclamation, there is a 0% chance I would have come up with this list. Like, I don't even think I would have considered Sphinx of Foresight in nearly any deck. I think there is certainly you definitely get some additional win percentage points because this is an open decklist format, right? So you can scry and really look for the key cards that you need in specific matchups. But even then, I just don't know. I would have definitely.
It's just how you come to the yeah. Yet Yukihiro doing very well here and really applying massive pressure over and over again with his little buddy, the dinosaur there, the Rotting Regisaur. And you can see that he's trying to go up against Andrew Cuneo here with this mono green deck, who, I mean, you've played a bunch of this mono green deck, Paul. It doesn't mind a race, does it?
Oh, absolutely not. And Rotting Regisaur is still kind of problematic unless you do happen to have a big creature yourself. Then you can go big creature plus Primal Might. Primal Might is the card that's really impressed me because when I first saw it prop up in decks, I was like, this card doesn't look very good. I don't understand. And then I played with it. I'm like, oh, this is just a green fireball. You know, it really...
That's not what you called it when we talked about it.
Sorry, green Embercleave.
There you go.
There you go.
That's the one.
But
the green,
you know, sadly enough, right now, for Andrew Cuneo, I mean, his green creatures are actually smaller than everything Ken Yukihiro has. He actually just hasn't drawn any of his big threats.
Really somehow has outclassed mono green, which is just, if they don't have power and toughness advantage over you, like we're done with your life, mono green. It just doesn't seem to add up. But that is what's going on here. Ken Yukihiro with just bigger creatures at this point. Ooh, the chat's
Yeah.
suggesting channel Primal Might, Paul.
Channel Primal Might. It's Chan Fireball all in one. Oh,
It is.
so yeah, the card Andrew Cuneo really needed there was either the Serpent or the Primal Might, as the Serpent has been a giant creature with reach, and a lot of Ken's removal actually just can't get rid of it, as Ether Gust doesn't target it, and it has protection from Teferi.
So where would you put Forest on your power rankings of cards he wanted to draw there?
Not very, but
Well, that's what he drew.
Yeah.
And that's game number one
Yeah.
going to Ken Yukihiro. He's going to pick up this game, put himself one of the players coming in to the round here. Looks like they were 3-1. I'll remind you that they can secure their day 2 slot with a 4th victory here. So the winner of this match will guarantee that. Now, there's a lot more tournament to be played past just making it to day 2, but of course, clearing that initial hurdle always feels good. So we'll see which one of these two players picks up 4th win.
yeah, and I mean, going through Ken Yukihiro's deck, I'm sure his deck gets a lot better after sideboard, as he's got a lot of cards here and there that are good in specific matches. But I mean, taking a look at his deck, I mean, there's 4 Mystical Disputes and 2 Dovin's Vetoes that are definitely going to be leaving his deck.
All right, looks like we are ready to get back down to the battlefield here. And let's see if Andrew Cuneo can mount a comeback or if Ken Yukihiro is going to finish him off and put himself into day 2 straight away here. How does this opener look to you, Paul? Looks like it's a little slow.
Yeah, it's a little slow. Oftentimes, I mean, the card you're always obviously looking for one is Pelt Collector, but you don't see that. You don't really see a 2-drop either. He might just have to run out that Serpent, but yeah, definitely a little bit on this. You might, if he doesn't draw something on turn 2, you might see it on turn. You might see the Serpent come out. Otherwise, you might want to play turn 3 and then be able to deploy your threats on turn 4. Oh, big, really big.
Hey, that's going to just bridge the gap here, letting Andrew Cuneo curve 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and then another 4-drop, however he decides to go about it. That was huge, a massive draw for him there to get that scavenging unit on the battlefield. And now all of a sudden, look at this. He's got 5 power here on turn number 3. Ken hasn't actually done anything yet. And he's like, go.
Wait, Ken still has Mystical Disputes in his deck. So does that mean he just had so many bad cards in the matchup that he still had to keep Mystical Dispute in the matchup? Because a 3-mana mana leak is not really what you want here.
Wow, I am surprised. And unfortunately for Ken, he's got 2 copies of it in his hand here. But you know what he can do? He can discard them to Rotting Regisaur. It doesn't matter what cards are in your hand as long as you got Reggie on the battlefield here.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess this is what happens too when you really tailor your deck specifically to beat basically one of 2 decks, right? He was really just targeting the Growth Spiral decks. So Bant Ramp and the various flavors of Reclamation. So he's been doing a really good job with that, but it seems to me that if he does get paired against some of these other decks, some of the more fringe decks in the tournament, he might struggle.
Well, here's Questing Beast now for Andrew Cuneo, and that can allow him to actually start applying some pressure. And in fact, it's going to be a trade with Ken's Rotting Regisaur. So Ken says, sure, I'll trade my 3 mana for your 4 mana. I didn't even have to lose a card to it. And guess what? There's another one. Man, Cuneo has really, I don't think he's drawn a land since that opener, and now he's just got 5 spells in hand. Somehow he's actually has to debate about what to put out in what order.
Yeah, a couple options here. He does have the Primal Might, but of course that would only trade with the Rotting Regisaur. He doesn't want to do that. Could play out the Vivian here to just pump up the Stonecoil Serpent. Still not going to be big enough here, so if Ken does choose to attack with the Rotting Regisaur, he's likely just going to let the Vivian die. But this does put him in a position where next turn he can actually cast the Primal Might to get that Rotting Regisaur off the battlefield.
Yeah, these sequences just favor Ken, don't they? Like that one right there was cast Vivian Arcbow Ranger, put a couple of counters on my Serpent, and then it just gets attacked and killed the next turn, and Kunio with no good blocks just has to let it happen.
And Ken just, please play something. Please make my mystical disputes useful. And, I'm curious to see if Andrew can see through it. Expecting something like an Ether Gust right here is reasonable. So maybe it's better to deploy 2 threats here instead of one of your 4 drops.
Well, in the meantime, Kunio is ahead in the damage race as he's already got Ken down to 9 life. And yeah, it looks like he's going to take that line that you just described, Paul. He's going to run out Scavenging Ooze, which is going to draw one of those mystical disputes here from Yukihiro. But that does allow Kunio to at least put something on the battlefield this turn. It's going to be a Paradise Druid.
That was not a bad draw here from Ken, but I mean, Rotting Registrar is doing a good amount of damage, but at the same time, Andrew is also cracking back for a lot, right? And if he just passing, I mean, he's slowly losing these resources over time. If Andrew can just kind of weather the storm a little bit, he's going to just be up on cards and resources here.
Look at this, 2 copies of Primal Might, though unfortunately he can't distribute them in a way to give him sort of redundancy, so he's just going to go for Vivian Arcbow Ranger. And I'm assuming that Ken is going to have to fire off one of the 2 spells in his hand on that, because it does represent lethal here with the 2 attackers plus the +1/+1 counters from Vivian.
Yeah, as you see, there's a Brazen Borrower still off to the side, so that could present a lethal attack. But that just, so he's letting it resolve.
Wait, he let it happen, so he's going to have to Ether Gust after attacks here, it looks like.
Yeah, because this is going to be a lethal attack. This is for 9.
That's right.
Ken, of course, does have the Ether Gust in hand. Kunio, if he's trying to... The thing is, because he knows about the Brazen Borrower, he's not just going to put all the counters on the Serpent. Given that we know that there's an Ether Gust in hand, it would make sense to pump up the Serpent. But yeah, he's choosing to play around the possibility of also a Brazen Borrower.
But that's over half of Ken Yukihiro's remaining life total falling away there to that Stone Coil Serpent. Down to 4 goes Ken. Now, he has Andrew on a 2-turn clock as well.
That was a draw. Extinction Event. Extinction Event on Ethan. That Serpent off the battlefield. Already. Oh, man.
Wow.
Kunio had the Primal Might to trample through.
Crazy. It even says on Extinction Event that 0 is even. It like tells you that.
As a reminder text.
Yeah. Now, what about this scenario, though? Kunio could steal this back with Primal Might, right?
Yeah, the Lovestruck Beast was a huge draw here from Kunio. And now, I mean, he's just going to go for the Primal Might. There's no cards, and that should be game.
That should be it. Wow. What a swingy back and forth awesome game. This is going to be Andrew Kunio evening things up at 1 game apiece for our players. Again, players are coming in with a 3-1 record and looking to pick up that 4th win to put them into day 2. Now, this is 14 rounds of Swiss, 7 today, 7 tomorrow. So if you do pick up the 4th win, you play all the rest of your rounds today and then come back tomorrow to play. It's not one of those tournament structures where you like kind of cut once you clear that hurdle. Every win is going to count when it comes to making it to the top 8. So it's just more of a kind of a landmark that you pass on your way. Well, it has the Pellet Collector. That's about it. Yeah,
this is on a mulligan too, so he's going to 5 here, and Ken's hand is really, really great. He's got the Ether Gust, he's got the Teferi, and he has the Sphinx of Foresight in the opener. So
an incredible game number 2, and hopefully we get something sweet here for game number 3. We see the Sphinx of Foresight trigger go on the stack. And
I'm just curious how Ken is going to plan on closing out these games, right? He's got some reactive cards. I guess you're just on planned Sphinx of Foresight, right? Just fly over.
I mean, we saw the Rotting Registrar in game 2 get pretty close. He did end up losing a fight, but looks like the Ether Gust is going to be left for Yukihiro. And I'm assuming he's just priced into paying to firing that off here, and that's what he does. So almost whatever went on the stack there, we're probably going to see it from Ken. And it looks like Kunio put it on the bottom of the library there.
This isn't a fight you can win.
Yeah, because he's got the extra one in
Here we
hand.
go.
Ooh, Tefler hits, but boy, that Paradise Druid would have been nice, especially given the fact that there's a Questing Beast in
Might
hand
be a
for
bad
Kunio that he would have loved to have been able to cast that turn. Unfortunately for him, not only was the Paradise Druid gone, but he drew a second copy of Questing Beast. Things getting a little awkward here for Kunio. This opening hand mulligan, and now it's developed a little bit weird. And there it is. Ken Yukihiro's signature card, Rotting Regisaur. Where would he be without Rotting Regisaur? And a land off the top though. Castle Garenbrig is going to allow Andrew to play out this Questing Beast. And this was huge because especially if Ken decides, yeah, sure, I'll trade off for it, and that unlocks the other Questing Beast in hand now for Kunio.
Right. Yeah, I mean, given that Kunio mulligan to 5 here, he's putting up an okay fight here.
Oh, I've done the hero thing before.
Ken now debating whether or not he wants to run out the Sphinx of Foresight. The issue right now is he could try to sit on these counter spells, but that Paradise Druid, I guess, is slowly whittling away the Teferi, so maybe he wants to find a window to run out a threat. But I mean, you've got those mystical disputes. You kind of want to be fight off.
This is so weird. Like, Paul, look at Ken Yukihiro's board in hand, and you tell me he's playing some like mid-range beatdown deck that's running like a bunch of 2-drop creatures. He's just playing Esper control post-board. Like, he's got Teferi, he's got counters and all this interaction and stuff. It's really funny.
We call this a transformational sideboard. But given that he can't sideboard all of them out, yeah. So Kunio, at this point, because he saw the mystical disputes, he might be looking to basically just play around it and just pass and wait till he draws one more land here. Now, he could have activated Castle Garenbrig to cast the Questing Beast, but that doesn't play around mystical dispute. You cannot use the 2 additional mana there to pay for the dispute because it's only for creature abilities. Are we going to see Petty Theft?
I'll protect you.
So this could be the opportunity here for Ken to run out Sphinx of Foresight. The card he's most concerned about is Questing Beast, but the Sphinx of Foresight does a nice clean job of trading for it. He's probably going to be taking... Yeah, so he's going to use the Castle Garenbrig, but Ken's probably going to be taking the trade here because he probably doesn't want that Teferi to take a lot of extra incidental damage here off the Questing Beast. I'm still trying to figure out how Ken's going to win this game. It's going to take some time.
Right. He certainly doesn't have a whole lot going on at this point, especially with that Sphinx in the graveyard. Maybe you were right about that he could just chip in with flyers of various sorts or whatever.
But I mean, I really like the way that Kunio's been playing this game. Kunio has a long history of playing a lot of control decks, so he really knows the types of interactions that Ken could have here. And given that he saw that mystical dispute post board in game 2, he chose to play around it and is being rewarded.
I've survived an apocalypse. I will survive you.
Just a bizarre. Ken Yukihiro really is just a genius. I mean, he's running 4 seasoned Hollowblade in his main deck, and this is what his deck looks like after sideboarding. It's just, how did we get here?
Yeah, so now Ken can run out one of these borrowers here and start up the pressure to Vivian.
And boy, Andrew Cunio's in a real pickle here. He's drawn a bunch of lands, and his deck's not really well set up to take advantage of that outside of Stonecoil Serpent. So he's going to need to get kind of lucky here and draw multiple spells, probably in a row. And they're also going to have to be his more powerful stuff. Wow, there you go.
It's a 7 mana great
about
hand.
As powerful as Gibbs.
This will be fun to watch.
Okay.
That is about
it actually
as powerful
is
as
a great henge. Yeah, and he actually gets a discount here because he has the Vivian, which added 2 counters to the Paradise Druid, which lowered the cost, which does actually allow him to play around 1 Mystical Dispute, but not 2.
That's right. But unfortunately for Kunio, the second one is going to get him. It is kind of interesting because the Great Henge, a potentially good draw here, though it doesn't really do a ton. He does need to start chaining together a few creatures, but come on, he's playing mono green, right? Like, how hard can it be for him to find that? I think he's got 24 lands in the deck, so tons of action. What do you see?
Ken just finding ways to chip in and find some of these extra flyers here. Sphinx of Foresight off the top here, really, really big, allowing him to apply even more pressure. He might still keep up the dispute here. He has the ability to go Mystical Dispute and play Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, I assume this game is basically over at this point. I mean, mono green not super well known for its ability to come back from being behind.
Yeah, I think Kunio's best shot at least trying to stabilize would be basically a Stone Coil Serpent off the top, as that would be doing a good job of blocking the Brazen Borrowers, and also it being immune to Teferi, very relevant here.
And there's old Rotting Regisaur. Okay, well, it's Vivian Arcbow Ranger. The good news is that Kunio does at least have a target to start plussing if that's what he wants to do, but really, Ken is so dominant on board at this point that it feels like Andrew needed something other than that.
Yeah, Ken basically rattled off 3 very key creatures here in a row, right? He had just the one Brazen Borrower, then he found another one, then the Sphinx, then the Rotting Regisaur, and that kind of allowed him to kind of be able to maneuver this game and come back.
There's this hollow play.
Oh, this is just perfect, right? Now he's able to completely empty out his hand and just pick up the Teferi.
Yep. Just like Ken planned it.
What a scrappy deck.
I just can't imagine being in Kunio's seat and seeing all of the spells cast this game, and then the last one is a Seasoned Hallowblade. And unfortunately for Kunio, he actually found one of his most powerful options with Nissa, but it's way, way too late for the board state that he is facing down. He is pack it in, and Ken Yukihiro, welcome to day 2, and welcome to a 4-1 record with a sweet deck. He really is kind of the people's champion when it comes to the decks that he brings to the table, Paul, because people love, I mean, and I'm not going to lie, we get the metagame breakdown where we actually list from the players. I go right to Ken. I want to know what Ken's playing too, just like everybody else. I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah, it's so wild. I mean, Ken is one of those people, every single event, I go, what's Ken playing? Right? And it's always something different. He never plays, or he very rarely plays what's considered to be the top deck in the format. And what's really funny is he is known for having a lot of success with ramp strategies. And the best strategy in Standard right now is a ramp strategy, and he's playing something completely different.
Very, very different. That is Ken Yukihiro advancing to day 2. But again, more rounds to play today. We're playing a total of 7 rounds, so a couple of more to go. With that, Paul and I are going to be taking a break. When we come back, though, we'll have more. Don't go anywhere. So we've got some mulligans here, Martin. Jensen is going down to 5. Burkhart's on 6.
Wow,
this could be really bad news for Jensen. How well would you say this Lotus Breach deck mulligans in general?
Not super well, because you do need 2 lands and a Lotus, and then the lower your starting hand size is, the more awkward cards like Hidden Strings get, because, you know, Hidden String is great when I'm casting other cards that draw me more cards and stuff, but what am I going to keep on 5? 3 lands?
So Jensen, by the way, does have access now to blue and green mana. I believe his Thespian Stage copied Watery Grave, and he found a forest. So maybe there's a way for him to build up resources. It just doesn't feel like he can overcome the sheer amount of disruption that Corey has sitting in his hand.
Yeah, now Corey knows that all he needs to do is basically just to copy his red twice at the end of Huey's turn, because even if Huey does draw that natural estate, he doesn't have anything left to go with it. Corey's trying to figure out Okay, if I make more copies now, I get to attack for more. I just need to make sure that I have lethal next turn. So what exactly is my play going to be? 2, 4, 6. He has access to 8 mana. I believe he's just going to attack for 4, because if he makes 2 rats at the end of Huey's turn, that's attacking for at least 16 the turn after.
And this is just Corey being as safe as humanly possible. He fires off Thoughtseize.
Quite a comeback.
And now he's about to win this tournament. And he's doing math. This is combat math for Corey. Not something he's accustomed to doing with his control
it's like,
decks.
wait, I have to attack with creatures? What am I doing?
He's like, can I afford to go ahead and cast Drown in the Lock on this? And he can make a rat on your end step.
All of them are 3/3s, but if he makes 2 more copies on his own turn...
And that does it. Corey Burkhart wins Players Tour Phoenix.
Hey everybody, welcome back to coverage of the Players Tour Finals. I'm Maria Bartholdi. We've got Cedric Phillips and Riley Knight here in the virtual booth with me. And Cedric, I mean, you've gotta love it. Ken Yukihiro 4-1 with this Esper mid-range deck. Did you think this is where he'd be at this point in the tournament?
Well, it is really, really, really hard to bet against Ken, right? Because he brings these crazy decks all the time, but he always wins with them. So even if I see that he's got a crazy deck, what am I going to say? Oh, that deck sucks. He knows something that we all don't know, and I think it's just time that we just get used to this. When he brings something that looks off the wall and doesn't have Growth Spiral in it, there's probably a reason for that, and he's off to a great start. Also, welcome back, Maria!
Hey, thank you. Yes, you know, the internet gremlins got into my system, but I'm back in another office. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this one will be better. Hey, we're doing our best here in quarantine during the time of COVID. But yeah, awesome stuff to see Ken playing this deck, doing so well with it. I hope he uses run because it is a blast to watch whatever the heck that deck is do its thing. Riley, you've been talking to some of the players behind the scenes. What's your updates from this round?
Yeah, I want to get everyone up to speed on some of the reclamation decks that are at the top of the standings. Plenty of reclamation decks, of course, getting the job done, at the top end of 10. So a couple that aren't playing any copies of Growth Spiral, any copies of Wilderness Reclamation. I want to let people know how these unsung heroes are doing. Ray Sut, of course, a household name in Magic, is 4-1 with mono white aggro. Now, he got off to a bad start, right? He was 0-1. He lost the first, picked up a round 1 loss against Michael Jacobs in his Mardu Winota deck, but since then has gone 4-0 against 4 consecutive reclamation decks. He's teched out with Law Rune Enforced, another great way to push through damage, along with Giant Killer, and obviously came here to tangle Ethration, and that's just what he's done. 4-0 against Rec, just having beaten Austin Bursevic playing a reclamation deck, so a 4-1 record for Ray Sato. Michael Jacob, just mentioned, is playing that bonkers Mardu Winota deck. If you haven't seen this, really do be sure to get across it. It is something special. It is a far cry from the old, Winota into Agent. At least it's more like Winota into Judith and Tajik, which you do love to see. But he's 4-1 after beating Kensuke Kato again on Team of Reclamations. So 4-1 Pima, good results so far. We're looking good for day number 2. And finally, Alvaro Fernandez-Torres was one of our 4-0 players who, along with the Danish juggernaut himself, Christopher Larsen, of course, was on 4-0 also on Judd, but things didn't go too well for Larsen or for Fernandez-Torres. Unfortunately, both of them are on 4-1, although of course still in with a very good sniff at a day 2 appearance. But I have to say, Jund Sacrifice is, broadly speaking, doing pretty well overall. The majority of its players have a positive record. Australian Isaac Egan at 3-2, and so most of the Jund Sacrifice players are putting up an abundant win rate, which is good. It's one of the decks that contests a lot of other those that are looking to prey upon the Rec. So an interesting balance sort of shaking out here, Maria, as we heap towards our day 2 cut.
Thank you so much, Riley. I've also got some results here from around the tournament. Much like Riley, yeah, you mentioned Alvaro Fernandez-Torres falling to 4-1, who was one of our undefeated players who beat him. Akira Ahara, currently undefeated at 5-0 with Team Reclamation. Remember that name? It's because we've got him all day, and also a Players Tour Online champion. Somebody else to keep your eye on, in fact, always keep this person, Sanfield, undefeated at 5-0, also playing Reclamation this weekend. Alan Wu, no, he's a champion, 5-0 with Team Reclamation. And yeah, we've got some more videos for you here to show before we get to our next round. We're going to talk about another archetype here. This one is going to be sacrifice decks. So we're going to see a video about that, as well as Marshall sitting down to have a chat with Brad Nelson. Take a look.
Welcome to the Players Tour Finals Archetype Overview. Let's take a look at the Sacrifice decks. There are two main flavors of Sacrifice decks in today's meta, Rakdos and Jund. At first glance, the decks have a lot in common. Both of them have the Cat Oven combo, both of them run Mayhem Devil, and both of them are using Claim the Firstborn to steal and sacrifice opposing creatures for value. Despite these similarities, there are distinct differences between the two builds that affect how they play. The Rakdos version aims to win as quickly as possible with aggressive creatures like Gutterbones, Serrated Scorpion, and Dreadhorde Butcher. Jund, on the other hand, gives up that early pressure in favor of grindy value engines like Trail of Crumbs, Vraska Golgari Queen, and Korvold, Fey Cursed King. This means that despite the similarities, these two lists have vastly different effectiveness in specific matchups. If you're interested in finishing off your opponent as quickly as possible, grab the Rakdos version. If you instead want to outgrind opposing mid-range decks, then Jund is the way to go. Either way, these decks show that destroying your own stuff is sometimes a great way to get ahead in Magic.
I am here with Brad Nelson. Now, Brad, you've got a special card to tell us about.
Yeah, it's my favorite card in existence, and it has nothing to do with the card itself, but the individual item. So here we've got an Exotic Orchard. Now, this is a very old Magic card. Not, I guess, that old for the history of the game, but for my career, it's old because this exact copy was in my first Pro Tour deck. And it was in my first Pro Tour match where I was up against Luis Scott Vargas in a feature match. Now, I don't know, for anyone out there that's played a serious Magic tournament, the first experience you want is not against Luis Scott Vargas in a feature match when you're just trying to, get your bearings. So I'm nervous, and I'm shuffling, and I guess I'm doing it so aggressively that I have two sleeves actually chopped through one sleeve and cut right into the edge of a card, just split it open.
Oh no!
This is before the match starts, right? So now I'm starting to sweat, and BDM is just behind, because BDM's been, here forever, and BDM's like, oh, I think I got one of those. And he goes through and he grabs out of his shirt pocket and he's fanned some rares from last night's draft. He's like, oh, here's one. I go on to lose the match. I completely forget about this Magic card. About 6 or 7 years later, BDM pokes me on Twitter and it's like, look what I have in my collection. I sell this Magic card, this Exotic Orchard. And I'm like, wow, I mean, who has a piece of memorabilia from their first match on a Pro Tour that also has some story attached to it? So I'm like, can I get that back? And he's like, if you top 8 another Pro Tour. And I'm like,
oh, that is great.
Yeah, haha, very funny, BDM. And I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, yes. So I don't think I'm ever getting this card back.
Mm-hmm.
But about a year later, I end up actually doing really well in a tournament. I 8-0 day one of a Pro Tour, and I start doing well on day two, and eventually I play my win in him.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guess who my win in it is against?
It can't be Luis.
It's Luis.
It's incredible.
I win the match. I sign the slip. As I'm walking on the feature match, BDM sees me. He's over doing some other stories. He comes over and he's like, did you win? And I won't say exactly what I said because I don't think I'm allowed to. But I looked at him and I said, give me back my blank card. and the next tournament, we ended up trading. I traded him a foil that I drafted in the Pro Tour that I think is now in one of his commander decks. And now I have my Exotic Orchard in a shadow box, and it just sits right up there on my mantle. And this is my favorite Magic card of all time, and I don't think anything that I could ever get again will mean more to me than this exact Magic card.
Oh, that is absolutely incredible how that story came about. And it's really awesome that you ended up with the card after all.
Yeah, I mean, BDM's always been one of my biggest fans and supporters. I call him my Magic dad, honestly. I mean, he's there since day one, and I love the man. And he knew that I could do it, and even when I didn't. So he wanted to motivate me. He wanted to see my career continue to shine. And I thank him for that, because he did motivate me and push me, because I really wanted this back.
Brad, thank you. That was an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Oh, for sure. Anytime. Thanks a lot, Marshall.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to coverage of the Players Tour Finals. I'm Maria Bartholdi, joined by Cedric Phillips and Riley Knight. As we kind of get close to the end of day number 1 here, we are playing 7 rounds of Standard Constructed today. We'll play 7 rounds again tomorrow, but we're heading up on round number 6 coming up. So we've got to find out who our feature match is for this upcoming round, and it's going to be a good one, if I do say so myself. Let's take a look at who will be battling down in our feature match area. Why? It's none other than Reed, Duke Hall of Famer versus Mike Sigrist. This is going to be a Team of Reclamation versus Mono White aggro matchup. So hopefully what Mike Sigrist was crossing his fingers for this weekend. Let's take a look at Reed Duke's deck. Running the deck of the tournament, Teamer Reclamation, of course, Cedric, proving to be number 1, the best deck. Number 2, the right choice for this tournament, question mark?
Well, you know, we'll have to see after the tournament unfolds, of course. I mean, again, when you combine this with 4-color Reclamation, it is over 50% of the metagame, and understandably so, given the results that this deck has had over the past month and change. But Reed might be up against a tough one here, because what Siggy is bringing to the table is here to beat this exact deck. Now, Reed's build of this deck, of course, is built towards beating the Mirror with main deck copies of Negate, main deck copies of Aether Dust, but he does have a little bit of hate against aggro in Storm's Wrath. But Storm's Wrath, Maria, is hate against mono green aggro more so than mono white aggro, because these little white knuckleheads do really, really well against sweeper effects. So as we get to Mike's deck list here, what you're seeing here with Reed's deck is a pretty typical build of Teamer Reclamation, and it's good against the Mirror, and it's got a little bit of hate against mono green aggro, but mono white might be in the driver's seat here, and if you're Sigrist, you got to be feeling really, really good about that.
Well, let's see Mike Sigrist's deck list here. Like we said, he is playing Mono White, which was the victor of the Red Bull Untapped event the past weekend. And like you said, he is looking to play against Team of Reclamation, bringing this deck to the tournament to punish anybody playing the most represented deck in the tourney. Tell me, why does this deck do a good job of beating Teamer?
Well, it gets to the battlefield early and often because the deck has so many 1-drops, and then of course the Storm's Wrath or Flame Sweep type effects just aren't that great against this sort of strategy. So, you know, you've just got enough ways with Selfless Savior and a bunch of these knuckleheads that when they die, they leave a little knucklehead behind. Your clock is pretty quick, and as long as you draw enough lands, but more importantly, not too many lands to be able to play all your spells, you can just run them out of the gym, swarm around them, and it's just really, really easy stuff for this mono white aggro deck to be able to get the job done. Kudos to Hoshiyuki, who made this deck for that Red Bull Untapped International Qualifier and destroyed that thing. Riley was there. He watched the whole thing unfold. It was a masterclass, and we might just get to see it again in the hands of Michael Sigrist.
Yeah, and Mike Sigrist actually coming into this tournament, he's been struggling with some stuff. Riley, you got a chance to talk to him earlier today. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I did. I got the chance to catch up with Siggy heading into this tournament, and I can tell you that he's playing this tournament on nightmare mode difficulty, because he's got a pair of twin daughters. They're 4, nearly 5, and he's in charge of the household, looking after those 2 kids while also trying to play through a Players Tour final. The reason, of course, that Mike is the one at home looking after kids, because his wife Heather is a frontline healthcare worker. She's out there fighting the fight against the global pandemic. And look, the Sigrist family has been through the ringer. I will tell you that. Heather has been out in the trenches again, doing what she can, as so many healthcare worker heroes around the world have been doing. And it's been pretty gut-wrenching stuff for Siggy and his family, with Heather being isolated, unable to spend time with her children or her husband, while Siggy's been at home looking after the kids in the house. And then to top it all off, a COVID scare for the family as well, with both Siggy and one of the kids getting very unwell. Fortunately, of course, we can all be very thankful that the test came back negative, and Siggy and the girls are all on the mend there. But it has been touch and go for Mike Sigrist and his family. And the end result, which, he obviously, look, Siggy he's a top bloke. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always very optimistic, and he's always trying to look for the good in things. But it was quite funny talking to him about his perspective playing this tournament while, of course, being a full-time father, looking after both the young kids while trying to get across a Players Tour final and play the best Magic you can. I have to admit, I have to say, it did surprisingly inform his deck choice. He did choose to play an aggro deck Maria just to maybe get through those rounds a little quicker than otherwise.
That's awesome. You know, we always talk about people playing these tournaments at home and being like, well, hey, you can play in your pajamas. You just get to sit at home and, relax. And that's not the case if you've got 2 little kids running around. Awesome stuff from behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Riley. Let's take a look now at our standings as we head into round 6 out of 7 here on day number 1 here in the Players Tour Finals. Let's take a look at who is still undefeated in the tournament and who is still battling hard. Take a look on your screen there. We mentioned this earlier. Akira Asahara, 5-0, sitting there undefeated, along with the likes of Alan Wu, who is, of course, a Pro Tour champion, along with Seth Manfield. Same can be said of him, and Christoph Prinz. Christoph Prinz there playing 4-color Reclamation. By the way, our first 3 players all on Teamer Reclamation. So all sorts of flavors of Reclamation there in the top 4 players. But then we get to 5 and 6, which is Christopher Larson and Alvaro Fernandez Torres. Those 2 players playing Jund Sacrifice. So that's the first time we see Sacrifice appearing there on our leaderboard. Here as we go down, 9 through 16, these players on 4 and 1. And remember, 4 wins locks you up to come back and play on day number 2. So all of these players, thumbs up. They're going to be coming back and battling tomorrow for sure. But of course, your record carries over in the tournament. So they do want to still keep winning as the tournament goes on. I know it sounds silly to say, but sometimes our tournaments records reset. No, these ones carry over. And there is Michael Jacob down there in 16th place. And you mentioned him, Riley, playing that Mardu Winota deck. Do you want to say anything more about that deck? Because that sounds pretty interesting. My ears perked up when I heard about that.
It's kind of funny, right? Because you turn up to a tournament like this with a very known metagame, with decks that are a known quantity, you actually do gain percentage points by playing rogue decks like this. Even if it's not the best deck in the room, you will win some percentage of games because people don't have a sideboard plan against you, don't have main deck cards that can contest what you're doing, or don't even know what you're doing in the first place. And these things do add up to a real material advantage. So Jacob's certainly taking advantage of that. He's done very well for himself.
All right, well, we'll get right down into the action of round 6 coming up here in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back after this.
And let's see what he finds. This could be it. If he hits well off of this collected company, there's a good chance that Ken will not be able to come back.
Looks like Selfless Spirit plus Deputy Detentions. I decided to go for Spell Queller instead.
Okay, a little bigger.
More toughness.
Yep.
In case he's able to counter the activation by giving the LC hexproof.
All right, looks like Karametra's Blessing, though, is going to save.
It's only a 3/3, though. He can't actually...
Yeah, he's offering a trade effectively. He did, but it looks like Kenta says, sure, I'll just take it, I guess. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, 3/4. So it has indestructible and +2/2. Right, okay. Ken Yukihiro is at a very high life total. Remember, the Alseid has lifelink, so the hit before and the 2 cents have given it that. In the graveyard was Sentinel's Eyes, and if we are just going to straight up race, it will work. Oh, but there's an Abelgast Herald to tap it down. This is the type of sequencing that Kenta Harane needs to just win without Ken really getting to interact from here on out. Okay, so that resolved. That is the Alseid being tapped. Now he can fire off the Selfless Spirit because he has Rattle Chains on the battlefield. I assume he can't put 18 power in the air for next turn. That seems like a lot, but who knows?
So each of those is 3. So if he draws another Lord, his best bet if he draws a Coco into 2 Lords, it's lethal.
Then that would be, yeah.
But barring that, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. He's at 14 right now, so a Lord is lethal. And that looks like a Lord.
There it is. Supreme Phantom. Tap down your last creature, and he just has to do the math and line everything up, because if you look at Ken's hand, or excuse me, at his board, he just has the 1 Plains left over, and that's a lethal attack. Kenta Harane is your champion for Players Tour Nagoya. Congrats.